Manny Diaz didn't know how to recruit. Guess what? Who did y'all get in the transfer protocol?
Nuts and honey.
Rolling right along with these 2019 college football team-by-team, in-depth, detailed previews and predictions. We're trying to jump around from conference to conference, covering as many teams as we can between now and the start of the season. We've done teams from all 5 of the major conferences. We've done Notre Dame. We're back today with another one, this time the Miami Hurricanes. Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today, so thanks for watching. Man, I really appreciate it also, in addition to that as well. And I appreciate it today more than usual, more than most days. I started asking you guys about 6 weeks ago to help me hit a goal of 20,000 subscribers by the start of the college football season, and you guys absolutely knocked it out of the park. I could not have done this without you guys. You guys don't understand and don't realize how much the thumbs up really help with the YouTube algorithms and getting these videos to show up in people's search feeds and things like that. You guys were sharing these videos all over the place, Facebook, Twitter, all different kinds of things like that. And we hit the goal a full month ahead of schedule. We're about a month away still from the start of the college football season, and we hit the goal of 20,000 subscribers yesterday. So a big salute to you guys. I can't thank you enough. I can't tell you how much it means to me that you guys actually take time out of your day to not only watch this channel, but then support it through the thumbs up, sharing, all the Patreon members, everything you guys do. It really means the world to me. And just because we hit the goal of 20,000 subscribers doesn't mean you have to stop doing those things. Who knows, maybe we can get to 21,000 now by the time the season starts. So keep hitting those thumbs up, keep sharing these videos if you enjoy them. It really does mean a lot. Let's get on with today's video. All right, Miami Hurricanes. I've had an up and down relationship with Miami Hurricanes fans over the course of the last couple of years on this channel. Love, hate, up, down. It's been a roller coaster ride between me and the Canes fans, the U family. Of course, they hired Mark Richt, Georgia's ex-coach, 3-4 years ago. And I told them what to expect. I told them what I thought Mark Richt was, who I thought he was, what type of coach I thought he was, and what I thought would happen at Miami. And they didn't want to hear it. They weren't happy about it. I'm an idiot. I've never seen a football game. That whole routine, same song and dance I get anytime I say something that somebody doesn't agree with, right? That was because he was at Georgia. This is the U. We're this, we're that, recruiting. All this kind. Of course, turns out Uncle Lou was right. And the Miami fans came flocking back to the channel to tell me that, to their credit, because a lot of times when stuff like that happens, fans of that team just disappear. They don't ever come back. A lot of them came back. This guy was right, knew what he was talking about, blah, blah, blah. Made a preview last year, which we'll go ahead and put that up on the screen, and then we'll talk about last year's Miami season before we move on to 2019. But here's the ending screen of my 2018 Miami Hurricanes preseason preview and prediction. Yep, there it is, 10-2. I had Miami at 10-2 last year. Of course, the year before that, they had won their division for the first time ever since joining the ACC 15, 16 years ago, whatever it was. I was high on Miami for last year. A lot of people were. I had them at 10-2. I had them losing on the road at Boston College and on the road at Georgia Tech. So I was right. You did lose on the road at Boston College and you did lose on the road at Georgia Tech. Problem is, you also lost to LSU, Virginia, and Duke in the regular season, finishing at 7-5 instead of the 10-2 I had you at. And let's be real, that's where most people had you. Now, when I made that video last offseason, it was back to, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Miami was going 12-0. There's no way we're losing to Georgia Tech. There's no way we're losing to Boston College. We're going to steamroll Florida State. We're going to run through this schedule. We're going to have a rematch with Clemson and Charlotte. Now, I agree. I thought you were going to have a rematch with Clemson and Charlotte. Anyway, point is, very disappointing season. You guys know what happened. Mark Richt basically had a choice at the end of the season. He was this is my opinion, okay? And no one's ever going to change my mind on this. I think Mark Richt was told, if you want to keep this job, you got to get rid of you got to completely turn over the offensive staff, including your son. He's got to go. You can't, this ain't the Trump administration. You can't be hiring all your friends and relatives and in-laws to run things around here. You have to hire people who actually know what they're doing. I think he basically had a choice either to fire his own son, basically, along with the rest of the staff and start over offensively, or ride off into the sunset. Obviously, he chose to ride off into the sunset. In comes Manny Diaz, defensive coordinator at Miami under Mark Richt, did a hell of a job. Actually got the Temple head coaching job 2 weeks wasn't it, before Mark Richt stepped down at Miami. Miami contacts Manny Diaz. He basically tells Temple he was just kidding, and he comes back and takes the head coaching job at Miami. I like the Manny Diaz hire. Miami needs something to happen. I don't know what that something is. Maybe it's Manny Diaz. I like his enthusiasm. The players, the fan base, they're absolutely in love with this guy. Manny Diaz is bordering on some type of idolatry, the way they feel about Manny Diaz, and there's no denying what the guy can do as a defensive coordinator. I mean, even looking at how bad Miami was overall last year, it wasn't a defensive issue. Miami had one of the best defenses, not only in the ACC, but in America. All the problems were offensive. I like the Manny Diaz hire, and Miami desperately needs something to happen. We'll see if Manny Diaz is that something. So Richt out, Diaz in, 2018, great defense, absolutely no offense, and it sort of started and stopped with a couple of different things. The quarterback mainly. You had N'Kosi Perry. People were clamoring for this guy to get some playing time. He finally comes in. He didn't look that good. Completed around 50% of his passes. Now, Miami fans have been telling me all offseason, well, that's because we had so many drops. Here's the problem with that. I'm not saying you're wrong, okay? But here's what I'm going to say. I do a lot of these previews and predictions. I always talk about teams' quarterbacks. And whenever I see a quarterback that's in the 50, 55% or less completion percentage, I say the same thing. You got to complete a higher percentage. Elite quarterbacks in college football are completing 65 to 70%. You got to at least be above 60. And I always hear the same thing, no matter what team or quarterback I'm talking about. But we had a lot of drops, Lou. I guess what that's telling me is that every team has a lot of drops. So, your quarterbacks that are completing 65% of their passes, guess what? Those receivers are dropping some passes too, okay? So I guess those teams can say, well, we would have had a 75%. So I get it, you had some drops, but the bottom line is N'Kosi Perry did not play well last year, period. He just didn't. He didn't play good. You bring in Tate Martell, transfer from Ohio State. Now, immediately when this was announced that Tate Martell was coming down from Ohio State to Miami, 99 out of 100 Miami fans and college football fans in general assumed he was going to be the starting quarterback for 2019, myself included. The more and more time has gone by, though, the less and less likely it seems like that's actually the case. Here we are, only about 3.5, 4 weeks out from Miami's first game, which is week 0 against Florida on August 24th, and there's no starting quarterback at Miami. Is it going to be Tate Martell? Is it going to be N'Kosi Perry? Now, I get it. Sometimes coaches actually know who the quarterback's going to be, and they just don't say it publicly. Why let the other team know, right? Or keep the competition going throughout summer camp and fall practice, even if you know who the starter's going to be. And I think there are some cases where that is the case, right? Ohio State, there's big bunch of articles in the last couple of weeks. Ohio State yet to name Justin Fields starter. Justin Fields is a starter at Ohio State. Anybody with a pulse knows that, regardless of what Ryan Day is saying. Jacob Eason at Washington. Jacob Eason is a starting quarterback at Washington. Everyone knows this. The coach won't come out and say it. There are some places, though, Miami's one of them, where it really is an open debate of who the starting quarterback is going to be, Tate Martell or N'Kosi Perry. Now, you can look at that one of two ways. Maybe N'Kosi Perry has gotten a lot better, or Tate Martell wasn't quite as good as maybe Miami fans hoped he would be. I don't know. And I don't think we're going to know until kickoff on August 24th. And the problem is you don't have any freebie games up front on your schedule to figure this thing out. You got to play Florida in your first game. This would have been a great season. Anytime you get a new coach, But especially if you have a new coach and quarterback questions, you sure would like it to be in one of these years where you play some nobody team week one, wouldn't you? And you don't get that luxury. That's going to be tough for Miami week one. Manny Diaz brings in offensive coordinator Dan Enos to try to jumpstart this pitiful Miami offense. Most recently, he was at Alabama as quarterbacks coach. We see what Tua's doing over there. So we'll see what type of effect Dan Enos can have on this offense. I like this hire. I think Dan Enos is a good offensive coordinator. Now we'll see what sort of approach Manny Diaz takes as a head coach to the offense. These defensive-minded head coaches sometimes have a hard time leaving the offense alone. And I honestly think that's the best possible thing any head coach can do, but especially a defensive head coach. You hire an offensive coordinator for a reason. Let him run and coordinate the offense. I think the less direct input and hands-on that Manny Diaz has with the offense, the better off Miami will be. Will Muschamp has had a hard time learning this lesson, running through offensive coordinators left and right. Even Kirby Smart has been accused of being too hands-on with the offense, and Kirby Smart's sort of overly conservative nature has trickled into the Georgia offense, much to the chagrin of some Georgia fans. But anyway, I do like Dan Enos as a hire. Cozy Perry, Tate Martell, redshirt freshman Jaron Williams. Which one will start? How many will play? Will they all play? I really don't think we're going to know until kickoff of that game. Maybe the week leading up to that game, something will be announced. But I wouldn't be surprised if Manny Diaz doesn't announce anything and we don't find out who the starting quarterback is for Miami until week 0 in that Florida game. Wide receivers. Losing Ahmad Richards really hurt Miami. This guy was a legit #1 wide receiver, a true elite talent at the wide receiver position. Had some injury concerns a couple of seasons ago. Tried to make a comeback last year. I think he was either right before the start of the season, might have even been the first game. He went down and forced to basically take a medical retirement. He just couldn't play anymore, and that's a shame. Not just because he was really, really good. You hate to see that for any of these college kids. He was a really, really good receiver. Losing out on him on sort of the last minute last year really set Miami's offense back. Now, Jeff Thomas stepped in and played pretty good. The problem is Jeff Thomas is not a true #1 wide receiver. He's a slot receiver. And he's a great slot receiver, too. I'm not taking anything away from him. Georgia's had some of these, too. McCole Hardman, a great slot receiver. But not a true #1 wide receiver, right? I mean, slot receivers tend to be a little shorter. Quick and stuff like that, but a little bit short to be a true #1 wide receiver. But Jeff Thomas is dangerous with the ball in his hands. But you need somebody really on the outside to step up and become that true #1 receiver. Who do you have here? Jordan. He's okay, but he's no Ahmad Richards. You bring a grad transfer in, I think from Buffalo, KJ Osborne, right? Write that down. Yeah, KJ Osborne. And you got a few other young wide receivers who haven't played a whole lot. Now, they've got some talent and potential. Miami is never hurting for talent at the skill positions. Now, quarterback lately has been iffy, but Miami always seems to have great wide receivers, running backs, things like that. And I think that's the case again this year. We just need one of them, or you need one of them to really step up and become that true #1 wide receiver. I think that would really help. Running back. Homer's gone to the NFL. DJ Dallas comes back. I like DJ Dallas. I think he's pretty good. Now, how good can he be behind that offensive line? We'll find out. He looked really good last year. I have some serious concerns, though, about Miami's offensive line. And, this is one of the reasons I love doing these preview and prediction videos. And people complain a lot that these things are too long, 30 minutes long. Listen, there's a million 4-minute videos on YouTube where somebody just puts a team's schedule up there and tells you they're going 6-6 or 12-0 or whatever it is. That's not what these are. But I learn a lot from doing these videos, and that helps me all throughout the season when I'm talking about these games and making previews and things like that. But listen to this about Miami's offensive line, though. Miami, there were 7 different offensive linemen that started a game for Miami last year. Of those 7 offensive linemen that started a game, only 2 are back. That's not good. 5 of them are gone. You got to come up with something on that offensive line. They're going to tell me in the comments, we recruited this guy. We have this transfer. I understand that. But cohesion and learning how to play together is crucial for an offensive line. And when you only have 2 offensive linemen on your team that have ever started a game there, that's a sketchy situation, especially when the offensive line wasn't all that good to begin with last year, and you only bring 2 of those people back that now have more experience. You're basically looking to plug in at least 3 people that have never started a game. I'm very concerned about Miami's offensive line for the course of the season, particularly now, week 0 against Florida. Florida will have probably the best front 4 or front 7 that Miami plays all year, unless you win your division and end up playing Clemson. But Florida's front 4, front 7 is really, really good, and I'm concerned if I'm a Miami fan about that offensive line situation. Your defense. Now, this is where all the good news is, pretty much, is over on your defense, right? Havoc rate. And some people buy into these advanced analytics and some people don't. You guys remember the movie Moneyball that came out whenever that was, 10 or 15 years ago, where, you know, this guy developed all these, super complicated algorithms and numbers to describe certain situations and stats and things like that. Football has copycatted that now. They have all these weird sort of in-depth super analytics. And one of the things that's real hot right now, you hear a lot of coaches talking about it. You hear a lot of analysts on TV talking about it. Havoc rate. I'm going to briefly explain what havoc rate is. It's not really that complicated. It's basically a team's total tackles for loss plus passes defended plus forced fumbles divided by the total number of plays. That gives you a havoc rate. And it's, like I said, everyone is talking about it right now. It became really popular a season or 2 ago. And this offseason, you can't watch or listen to any college football analysts on TV or the radio without hearing about havoc rate. A lot of the coaches are talking about havoc rate. Miami ranked 1st in America in havoc rate last year. Why? Primarily their front 7. Their front 7 was phenomenal last year, right? As many bad things as you can say about Miami's offense last year, you can turn all those around, and there's that many good things to say about Miami's defense. Defensive end, you had Garvin and Jackson, and defensive tackle Jerry Willis III. That's great. Problem is, only Garvin returns out of those 3. Out of those 3, you had 50 tackles for loss, 18.5 sacks, and 11 passes defended. That's what got you that number 1 havoc rate. You brought in a lot of transfers along the defensive line, which is a theme for Miami this year. Their recruiting class was not good in 2019. Now, Miami fans jumped all over me in February after signing day. I made a video about Miami's signing class about how disappointing it was. They made a bunch of excuses about the transfer protocol.
Manny Diaz didn't know how to recruit. Guess what? Who did y'all get in the transfer protocol?
Nuts and honey.
Where they tried to tell me, well, yeah, but coaching change and doesn't matter. We brought in this transfer and that transfer. I mean, Miami signed, I don't know how many, 20 transfers Miami signed, whatever it was a ridiculous number. A lot of those are on the defensive line. Hopefully, of those defensive line transfers you brought in, 1 or 2 of them ends up being good enough to start, because you need some help on the defensive line. Losing 2 of those 3 from last year, it's going to be hard to replace that production. Now, at linebacker, the glass is a lot closer to being full. You get Quarterman and Pinckney back. I'm surprised 1 or both of them didn't leave to go to the NFL. They're both seniors coming up this year, right? Yeah. So they were juniors last year. They could have gone pro. Somehow Manny Diaz talks both of them into coming back, and you get McLeod and Finley back too to provide you some depth there. Now, the secondary, you lose 2 safeties and a corner, right, from last year's secondary, which I think overachieved last year, which is a testament to Manny Diaz. I think when you looked at Miami's secondary, it didn't look all that good, but it ended up being one of the best, if not the best, secondaries in the ACC last year. They played really, really well, and that's a good sign. Losing some of those guys, you can have confidence. I have confidence that whoever Miami plugs and plays in those positions this year is going to have a good year. Now you do get Trajan Brady, is that his name? You get him back at corner. He's probably the best corner in the ACC and one of probably the top 5 or 10 corners in all of America. He's that good. Again, with the transfer situations, you bring in Bubba Bolden. And Miami, even though they didn't have a great recruiting class overall, Miami signed 3 4-star defensive backs in the 2019 class. you may need one or two of those guys to play some this year. Typically, you don't want to have to play freshmen if you can help it, unless they're just so good you can't keep them off the field, and maybe that's the case. We'll see. But losing two safeties in a corner, you may have to play one or two of those freshmen, but they're very highly recruited 4-stars. So you're looking pretty good in the defensive backfield. So defense, I think, has potential to be almost as good as last year's, and could be as good as last year's. Could even be better. I don't think you can underestimate getting Quarterman and Pinckney back. Those two guys are legit stars in college football for sure. Offense, I think there's a lot of questions. Quarterback up in the air, and offensive line, I think, is a serious concern and issue. And you need a number one wide receiver. You need somebody to step up to be that go-to guy on the outside. Jeff Thomas is great, but he's a slot receiver. You need somebody on the outside. All right, let's put the schedule up on the screen. You guys know how we do this. We're going to go through it game by game, and I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single game, with the goal being to come up with a final end of the season record, right? What can Miami do this year? Okay, you start off with what is probably one of the most talked about games of the offseason, a neutral site game. I believe this is being played in Orlando. It's either Tampa or Orlando. I think it's Orlando, though. Anyway, Miami versus Florida. Big in-state rivalry game. These two teams don't play every year like, Florida plays Florida State every year. Miami plays Florida State every year. Miami and Florida haven't been playing every year. They play this year. Big week 0 game. Thank God college football gave us this game, right? You guys remember week 0 from last year? 3 or 4 games involving a bunch of teams no one's ever heard of or cared about. I think Colorado was the biggest name team playing in week 0 last year. Hats off to the NCAA for giving us one great game here to start the season off August 24th, Florida and Miami. I've been saying all offseason Florida should win this game. They're the better team. Dan Mullen, 10 years of coaching experience, even though he's never won anything. Experience still matters versus a coach that's going to be coaching his first ever game. Florida does not have any issues or question. Well, I won't say they don't have any issues, but they don't have any question marks at the quarterback position. Miami's got issues and question marks at the quarterback position. Florida's got a great defensive front. Lots of questions about Miami along the offensive line. Miami's got great skill position players. Florida's got great DBs. I just think there's too many advantages for Florida here. Really, the only thing I see in Miami's favor in this game, I see 2 things in Miami's favor in this game. Number one, another offseason filled with a ton of distractions off the field for the Florida Gators. Well documented, but about 25% of their 2019 signing class either didn't qualify or changed their mind and ended up not enrolling at Florida. Several other transfers, people leaving, the whole issue with Chris Steele and what was going on with that. Lots of distractions. Now, didn't seem to hamper Florida last year, winning 10 games, but, we'll see. I guess that's a benefit for Miami. You haven't heard a lot of noise or news out of Miami training camp this offseason, other than a lot of questions about the quarterback. But you haven't heard about any off-field issues, at least I haven't. So things seem to be quiet down there. The other advantage, or at least positive, I guess, I would give towards Miami for this opening week game with Florida. There's no pressure on Miami in this game, in my opinion. I think all the pressure is on Florida here. Miami comes in with not a whole lot of expectations for this year on a national scale. I know Miami fans are constantly excited and have expectations, and that's fine. But nationally, the expectations for Miami were way higher heading into last year than they are heading into this year for obvious reasons, I think. So I don't think I think all the pressure is on Florida here. This is Manny Diaz's first game. Miami could lose this game. People expect them to lose this game. I really don't think it would be the end of the world for Miami if they lost this game. If Florida loses this game, you're going to have a lot of people asking a lot of questions about that team and Dan Mullen. Miami has been preparing for this game since forever. The players love Manny Diaz, like we talked about before. They'll run through a wall for this guy. However good Miami can be, we're going to see that against Florida. They're going to go out there and give everything they have in this game. They've got absolutely nothing to lose. I just don't think it'll be enough. I just think they're too inexperienced at key places. Quarterback, offensive line, questions at wide receiver, defensive line, sort of some question marks there. I do like your linebackers in your secondary. Defensive line, wait and see. I trust Manny Diaz, though. But the offensive line situation and the quarterback situation just really kind of are slowing me down on Miami. I'm going to have to stick with sort of my gut and my instincts that I've had all off season, and I'm going to have to give Florida the win here. Listen, nothing would make me happier for Florida. People are going to say, he's just saying that because he hates Miami. What do you think? I love Florida? Snap out of it, nitwit. No, I can't. Nothing would make me happier than for you to go down there and slap Florida around. I just can't see it happening. I think Florida will win. If you look right now, I think Florida's about a 7 to 10 point favorite, depending on where you look. I wouldn't be surprised if this was maybe even a 14-point game. I just don't think Miami is ready week one with that offensive line and quarterback questions to go up against a Florida. I have to start you off with a loss. Now, of course, then you get a bye week. Now, most teams get 2 bye weeks this year. You get 3 because your week 1 game was moved up to week 0. So you then get a bye week when everyone else is having week 1. Then you go on the road for your first ACC game at UNC. Now, this is an interesting game here. Mac Brown, of course, back at UNC, his first year there. So you got a battle of first-year head coaches here, at least at their current school. Mac Brown, of course, was at North Carolina forever. Well, was at Texas for a long time, then sat in a broadcast booth collecting dust. Now he's back at Chapel Hill at North Carolina for one last rodeo. Manny Diaz worked for Mac Brown for a period of time on his defensive staff, so these two coaches know each other. I think this has the potential to be a pretty good game here, especially if Miami does lose to Florida, and especially if they lose bad to Florida. Now, you do have the week off to get over it. Will there be a hangover here heading into this North Carolina game? How much of an impact can Mac Brown have at North Carolina in year 1 in the first game, second game of the season for them? I don't know. But I think you go on the road and get a win at North Carolina. I just think you're a more talented team. I know Mac Brown has a ton of head coaching experience, and we talked about that mattering in the Florida game. But Florida's roster is just way better than North Carolina's roster. I mean, come on. I think you go on the road here and get a big win at North Carolina, starting off 1-0 in the ACC, 1-1 on the season. All right, then you got a couple of non-con games against some lower classification schools that you should win. Bethune-Cookman, that should be no issue. Now, Central Michigan, they're an okay team. They're not a team you can sleepwalk through. Now, they have no business competing with Miami, and I'm giving you a win, and you should win that game. But don't let you be the laughingstock this year, like Virginia Tech losing to Old Dominion or Michigan losing to App State 111 years ago, whatever. You should win this game. I think you will. You're sitting at 3-1 heading into your next bye week, which would be your second bye week. Come out of that, and you got 3 home games in a row, 3 ACC games. Can you go 3-0 here? Virginia Tech, Virginia, and Georgia Tech. No, you can't. You can't go undefeated there. I'm going to give you a win over Georgia Tech. They got a new coaching staff, getting rid of the triple option, going to a totally different style of offense. It's going to take more than a year to get that turned around. Let me mention something about that. I keep hearing from Florida State fans saying I'm contradicting myself because every time I talk about Georgia Tech, I say they're going to be bad. They're changing offenses. It takes more than a year to get that straightened out. But then when I talk about Florida State, I don't give Willie Taggart the same benefit of the doubt, because he changed offensive styles too. So why am I so hard on Willie Taggart? Listen, that's the most ridiculous comparison Uncle Lou has ever heard. Changing from the triple option to any other offense is way different than what Florida State did. Changing from a pro style to a spread, you can run that with the same basic kind of players, okay? That's a difference in philosophy more than it is personnel, okay? Georgia Tech is going from a team that passed the ball 3 times a game and ran the triple option to a modern day offense. They have to flip their entire offensive roster over to even try to run that kind of offense. How do you not understand the difference between an offense switching from the triple option to a modern day offense versus what Florida State did, which was switch from a Jimbo sort of pro style offense to a Willie Taggart Spread offense. You can switch from a pro style to a spread in 1 year. It doesn't take 3 or 4 years to rebuild an offense to go from pro style to spread. That's the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard, and it makes me question and wonder if Florida State fans know what the hell they're talking about when it comes to college football and offenses in particular. You sound like you sound like the world's biggest excuse maker. Oh, well, this guy gives Georgia Tech benefit of the doubt, switching from triple option to Jeff Collins' offense, but says Willie Taggart's no good because their offense was no good in year 1 under Willie Taggart, but they changed offensive styles too. That's the dumbest damn thing Uncle Lou has ever heard. Y'all need to do better. Y'all need to do better. Jesus. I know Florida State was an all-girls clown college for the first 75 years of its existence, and it's still a clown college. But it is co-ed now, so hats off for that. But how do you have a college in modern times where you can major in the trapeze? How do you have a college in modern times where you can major in learning how to pull a never-ending handkerchief out of the pocket in your shirt? This is ridiculous. But anyway, no, what Willie Taggart is doing, switching from a pro style to a spread, is not even remotely similar and not even in the same universe or stratosphere as what Jeff Collins is doing at Georgia Tech, taking an offense with a quarterback that's 5'8" and throws 3 passes a year, running a triple option offense and turning that into a spread. No, it's not even remotely the same. And I drooling and got spit and everything else running down now. Okay, so Miami will beat Georgia Tech, so we established that. That leaves Virginia Tech and Virginia. Now, I think it's a benefit to you that you get both these games at home, obviously. Virginia Tech, I'm more confused on Virginia Tech than maybe any other team in college football. I like their head coach, but what's going on there? They've not looked good the last couple of years. Underachieving, underwhelming, can't seem to get going. Virginia, on the other hand, upward trajectory. I do think Virginia is the better team. Now, I've already done a Virginia preview, so if you've seen that video, then you know which way I'm going on the Virginia game. But you play Virginia Tech first coming out of a bye week. This is sort of, well, this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But here's the thing. Look back at any team's season over the history of college football, you always see things that don't make any sense. Did it make any sense that you lost to Duke last year? No. I think you lose to Virginia Tech and beat Virginia. That's what I see happening. Sorry, cry about it in the comment section. But more importantly, if you want to just take this 3-game stretch here, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and Georgia Tech, you're losing one of those games. You're going 2-1 over that 3-game stretch. I think you lose to Virginia Tech, beat Virginia, and beat Georgia Tech. All right, then you got to turn around and do 2 road games at Pitt, and then your game of the year at FSU. Listen, the Miami-Florida State game is the game of the year for both those teams every single year, no matter how good or bad either or both of those teams are. It's just the way it is. It's one of the best rivalries in college football. It's right up there with Georgia, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, Michigan, Ohio State, any rivalry you want to name. It's right up there with it. That'll be the case again this year. Miami's got to go on the road to FSU. Willie Taggart, who doesn't know what he's doing, you'll get a win there. But I think Pitt beats you. I think you on the road to Pitt. I think you'll beat Georgia Tech like we mentioned. Then you got to go on the road. You're going to lose to Pitt looking ahead to that Florida State game maybe. I don't know. You lose to Pitt. And then you'll beat, though, Florida State. They got to get rid of Willie Taggart before they do anything meaningful again. Got to know what he's doing. All right, then you play one of the worst teams in the Power 5, Louisville, win. Listen, they got a new coaching staff too, but coaching ain't their issue. They got a talent issue as well. As in they don't have any talent. So you should steamroll Louisville. I have you with a win there. All right, then you get your final bye week of the season before playing another non-con game at FIU. Well, huge in-state rival here, FIU. No fights in this game, please. Thank you. But you'll get a win there. Then you finish up your season on the road at Duke. Revenge game for Miami. Loss. I think Duke beats you again. I don't think Duke's a good team. I think Miami is better. Duke lost Daniel Jones off last year's team, who plays for the Giants now, first-round NFL pick. Duke wasn't very good with Daniel Jones. They're not going to be very good without him, but I think you're dropping that game. I'll be honest with this schedule here. This was one of the toughest ones I've had to do yet, and I'm just going to spend a minute or two telling you why. I have you losing 1, 2, 3, 4 games, going 8-4, right? I've got you going 8-4. You could go 9-3. I don't see much better than 9-3, but I think you could go 9-3. And 9-3 may be good enough to win this division. It really could. In fact, it could come down to this last game of the year at Duke. I think Miami and Virginia may have a similar record headed down the stretch here this year in 2019. Virginia has to play Virginia Tech the last week. Miami has to play Duke the last week. Could be the type of thing where whichever team wins their division between Miami and Virginia. You could go 9-3 and win that division. I'm just going to give the overall edge to Virginia this year. And because I'm giving the overall edge to Virginia this year, and I think you're losing to Florida, I think Virginia's going to lose 2 ACC games. So you got to lose 3 ACC games. That's just my overall feeling of that division. I think Virginia's the cream of the crop. I like their quarterback in Bryce Perkins. I think he's good for a couple extra wins this year versus what Miami has at quarterback. So that's sort of my thinking. That's sort of how I do these schedules. I kind of say, well, this looks sort of like an 8-4 schedule, and then I try to find the 4 losses type of thing. Sort of how I do it. Miami fans are not going to be happy with this preview and prediction. And in fact, I've said multiple times in the offseason that with this schedule, Miami could go 11-1. And they could. But the quarterback situation has not panned out this offseason. Every report, every article, everything I hear, both professionally from professional people on ESPN and the radio, and even here on YouTube, the Miami fans and people in my comment section, Miami people who have their own YouTube channels, they don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation. Half of them want Perry. Half of them want Tate Martel. Handful of them say, screw it, get rid of both of them, play this Jaron Williams, whatever. The point is, they don't know what's going on. And after doing this research video, looking this stuff up, seeing the situation with Miami's offensive line, forget about 11. I don't see 11-1. I just don't see it. I think the potential was there for you to be better than every team on this schedule except for Florida. And that's where I sort of got the 11-1 thing from during the offseason when I did the best case scenario video. I don't see that happening with the quarterback situation and the offensive line that you have. I think 8-4 is the most likely record. This is what I'm gonna go with. Florida loss, Virginia Tech loss, at Pitt loss, at Duke loss. I'm not very confident in the Duke loss. Like I said, 9-3 is a real possibility and win that division. Okay, but I'm gonna go with 8-4. Can't wait to read the comments. Don't forget, I've never seen a football game. Don't know what a football even looks like, to be honest. But I do appreciate you watching, and have a good morning.